All right, let's jump right into this. Throughout the whole pandemic, we heard all these theories flying around about who was most at risk. But one of the ones that really stuck around, one of the most intriguing, was this idea that it could all come down to your blood type. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to try and decode the science behind this really fascinating link.
I mean, this was the big question, right? It was on pretty much everyone's mind. As doctors and scientists were just overwhelmed with millions of cases, they started wondering, could there be some hidden biological marker? Something as basic as our blood type that could help predict who'd get really sick and who might have some kind of natural protection.
So, as the pandemic really took hold, the search was on. Scientists were looking for any factor that could influence how things played out with COVID-19. We all knew about the big ones, like age and pre-existing conditions, but researchers were digging way deeper, hunting for other biological clues.
And that's when a pattern started to emerge from all that data. It turns out our ABO blood type, well, it seemed to play a role. And this wasn't totally out of the blue. We already knew blood type could influence how we react to other diseases like West Nile virus or even H. pylori. So naturally, it became a huge focus for COVID-19 research.
Okay, so before we get into all the juicy findings, let's do a quick, super simple refresher on how blood types actually work. Because, this is the foundation for understanding everything that's about to come.
Okay, so at its core, the whole ABO system is all about these things called antigens. The easiest way to think about them is like tiny little flags or markers that are literally sitting on the surface of your red blood cells. And that's it. Which flags you have or don't have is what determines your blood type. Simple as that. So you've got two key players in this whole system, antigens and antibodies. Think of it like this. Antigens are the me flags on your cells. They identify your cells as your own. Then you have antibodies, which are the security guards floating around in your plasma. Their job? To attack any flags that they don't recognize. It's a perfect yin and yang system. And here's how that all breaks down. If you're type A, you've got A flags, so your body's security guards are trained to attack B flags. They're anti-B. If you're type B, it's the complete opposite. Now, type AB is interesting. It has both A and B flags, so it doesn't make any security guards for them. Why would it? It would just attack itself. And then there's type O. It has no flags, so its security system is on high alert for both A and B.
All right, so now that we've got the basics down, let's get back to the mystery. The first big question researchers really tackled was this. Does your blood type actually make you more or less likely to catch the virus in the first place?
So in a whole bunch of the early studies, one finding kept popping up over and over again. It seemed that people with type A blood had a statistically higher risk of testing positive for the virus compared to people with other blood types.
And yeah, on the flip side of that coin, the data often pointed to some kind of protective effect for type O blood. Study after study kept reporting that folks with type O were less likely to catch the virus. It was a pretty consistent finding, at least at first.
And this quote from a major review paper really nails that early consensus. It says, blood type O is mostly associated with lower rates of SARS-CoV-2 infection, while blood type A is frequently described as a risk factor. For a while there, the story seemed pretty straightforward, right? Type A, bad. Type O, good. But you know how it goes with science. It's never quite that simple.
But here's where things get, well, complicated. The truth is, the data was all over the place. For every study that found a clear link, you could find another one that found no connection at all. The results also seem to shift depending on the ethnicity of the people in the study. And this is a big one, some of the studies might have been accidentally biased. They used blood donors as their healthy control group, but type O people donate blood more often, which could have skewed the numbers.
Okay, so that brings us to the next really logical question. Let's just forget about your chances of getting infected for a second. Let's say you do get sick. Does your blood type have any say in how bad it gets?
And listen, if you thought the evidence for just catching the virus was a mess, hold on. The data on how severe the illness gets is even more of a mixed bag. The research here is all over the map, with study after study just flat out contradicting each other.
Now, there was a slight trend. People tried to tease it out. And again, type A seemed to be linked to more severe outcomes, like ending up in the ICU, and type O again seemed to be protective. But it was a really weak signal. In fact, a lot of very large, very well-designed studies crunched the numbers and came to a different conclusion, that there was no significant link to severity at all. None.
Okay, so this is where it gets really cool. If there is a link, even if it's a weak one, how could that even work? What's the biology behind it? Well, scientists have come up with a few pretty fascinating ideas that could explain what they were seeing.
Okay, so there are three major theories on the table. First up is natural antibody protection. Here's the idea. Imagine the virus grows inside a type A person. It might get tagged with some of that person's A antigens, kind of like it's wearing a type A disguise. Then, if that same virus tries to infect a type O person, their body's built-in anti-A antibodies, their security guards, might spot that disguise immediately and just neutralize it. Pretty cool, right? The second idea is about aiding viral entry. It's possible that the blood group antigens we have on the surface of our lung cells could actually be helping the virus, acting as a sort of co-receptor or a docking station, making it easier for the virus to get inside ourselves. And the third hypothesis has to do with clotting risk. This is a big one. We know that non-O blood types already have a slightly higher risk for blood clots, which turned out to be a really dangerous complication of severe COVID-19. So maybe type O's naturally lower clotting risk gave those folks a bit of an edge.
Okay, let's try and pull all of this together. We've looked at dozens of conflicting studies, a few really plausible theories. So what's the bottom line here? What does all this actually mean for you?
Right, here's the most important takeaway. What we're seeing here is a statistical association. It is not proven causation. That's a huge difference. Your blood type at the very most is just one tiny, tiny piece of a much, much larger puzzle. Things like your age, your overall health, and most importantly, your vaccination status are way, way more important. They're much better predictors of what might happen. And we have to remember, the science here is still evolving. Researchers are still working on this.
And that really leaves us with a final, kind of fascinating thought. This whole journey into blood types and COVID is just a perfect reminder of how much we're still learning about our own bodies. It really makes you wonder, right? As we keep decoding our own biology, what other hidden defenses or hidden vulnerabilities are just waiting to be found inside of us?